So, just like we are building our community, I am lucky to work with people who I don't have to do this alone, who are, talking to them on text messages or, we're doing phone calls, whatever we need to do, we're all supporting each other because this is really hard work. But for me, and I think this is something that anybody who wants to, and however you want to get involved, find the thing that you get kind of excited for. And I don't know, maybe I'm a masochist. I don't know. The thing that gives you a little bit of energy, the thing that you feel like you do well.
Yeah.
And let that be what you focus on. Yeah. I ran for office
about a year ago,
right? Yeah.
For the primary.
I ran in the primary for District 16. And I found that this is something that I really enjoy doing, is talking about politics, talking to legislators, talking to organizations about and lobbying. And so I have built some trust and networks. I have a lot of privilege. I'm a trans masculine white person with a beard, and I can walk through that place and have relative safety. And so this is something I can do.
And could you tell us a little bit about what the process was like running for office as a trans man, even in a district that is probably more likely to elect a trans man than any other district in Boise? Maybe there's a couple other, but very few.
Yeah, District 16 is very blue. I mean, I think it's been over 10 years since there was a Republican, and there wasn't, but that's how long back I had looked. So all of the legislators in District 16, which is West Boise and Garden City, right? They're all Democrats.
Right.
And District 16 was the first district to elect openly gay man. Now, we had an openly queer person elected. That was Cole LaFaver, first ever in Idaho. We've had, and then John McCrosty was elected in District 16. And right now, Idaho has one out elected person in office, and that's in a city council role.
Oh, wow.
So I did feel like it was a good opportunity, a good place for me to run. And I ran a campaign for, I think, over a year. And it was an interesting experience because I think a lot of people were like, "Who are you?" What? Because I'd been more involved in community advocacy, not political advocacy. So I just kind of showed up and I literally walked up to Senator Robbie at this town hall, and I was like, "I'm Nixon Matthews, and I'm running for office." That was the first time I said it out loud, and I think she was kind of like, "Who are you? What's happening?" Nicely, but
What pushed you to do that?
Because I watched HB 71, which was the gender affirming care ban for youth. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching young people see their healthcare being taken away. And it felt like a moment where they're like, what is my future?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we need representation in that building. Knocking on doors was interesting. I didn't get elected. I ran through the primary. I came in second out of 4. It was the most competitive primary. I outraised a lot of people, which is a big deal. But I go knock on doors, and while a lot of people were excited and supportive, I certainly had moments, straight to my face say, well, I'm not going to vote for you because you're a trans person and nobody will take you seriously. You won't be able to get anything done. And these were Democrats, by the way. These are people who, should feel differently. And, we need them to also see, representation is important. Let's make sure we lift that up. So that was disappointing to have that happen.
I'm sure. Yeah. Because it's we've talked about this before. There are so many traits and characteristics that make you and that make you qualified to run for office. And then they look at one thing that's as trivial to me as the color of your eyes. And they're like, no, you're not as good because of that. And it's like, are you stupid?
And people often want to people always want to say why does your transness have to be your whole identity? And it's as much as, I think there are times when we can fall into that ourselves. I know I've fallen into that myself, but also the world doesn't let us they don't let us not be trans.
Exactly.
Like they don't see us not as trans people.
Right.
Unless we happen to maybe pass or maybe people don't know that about us.
Right.
It's very rare that we're in a situation in which our transness is not like
that's true.
Seen, I guess, or part of the
it's like thrust upon us. Like they'll say both things. Like they'll say you make it your whole identity out of one side of their mouth, and out of the other side they'll be like, that's all you are.
Right.
Okay, so like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like we're in a losing situation either way.
Right. And I opted to be out. It was really important to me to be an out trans person running for office, because I knew it was going to be a hard race, and I knew there would be a good chance I wouldn't win because of who I am.
Right.
And I actually, for me, I felt like it was really important to be out, because I could have
just not.
But I thought it was really important, because that was the whole, like the spirit of the decision. The reason is because we need representation. And I kind of was in this mindset that I thought, I think a lot of people will feel the same. And I was prepared. I showed up. I was ready. I knew the issues. But I think ultimately that had an impact.
Yeah, I remember meeting you, like, was it like 2 years ago that you moved back to the area, right? Because I think you moved
over 3.
Yeah, like you moved like a little.
4.
I remember we kind of met. We met when I first kind of moved back, and I knew you hadn't been here too long, and then it was like next thing I knew you were running for office, and I was like, wow, which was fantastic. It was really great to see, because I think we both felt drawn to come home.
Absolutely.
Because we lived in places where we could have better experiences as trans people, but like I was, and I, like you were sharing with me, like just drawn to like, this is my home, and I shouldn't have to leave in order to live here as a trans person. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to, but I am in a place now in which I can come back. I can deal with the shit of being a trans person in public, and hopefully work toward being a part of like making it a better place for us, so that people don't have to leave. Or those who are unable to leave can hopefully have a better experience.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of people want to leave, and it's really complicated. Like the process of leaving is not easy, like especially if you're trying to get into a different country, because the rest of the world is like, that's messy. We don't want any of that. It's like, I mean,
well, you're basically leaving like refugees into like other, even if it's just other states or other countries. And so, and I think like people don't realize, like, even if you could come up with the money, or you could find a place to land in another, like maybe, because I know there's things being done to help people move and get to these places. You're still in a new city, a new state, a new place, and you've left your whole, you've mostly had to leave all your friends, all your community in order to kind of go to that. And it's a huge thing, especially in the middle of a transition and everything else.
Well, and you like the cost of moving, and then the finding an apartment, putting down payments on an apartment, finding a job that you're going to be able to have to pay all of those bills. Like it is, when I decided to leave, it was shortly after I came out as trans. So I came out first as lesbian and then later as trans. And it was scary. Oh my goodness. People would say shit to me in the grocery store. I'd be walking my dog down the street. They'd yell at me from their cars.
Oh, wow.
The worst was TSA. I got, took my new ID to the TSA, and the person looked at it. And this was before you would like, no, that was the same. Never mind. But anyways, they looked at it, they looked at me, they looked at it, and they looked at me. Then they called 2 TSA agents up to escort me through.
Oh, wow.
And it was, and it got worse from there. And it was really a scary experience. So moving felt like a must at that point. And it took me a long time to be able to, I had been planning, I'd been saving, but it took me a long time to make it happen. And it's hard. And it was wonderful. Quite frankly, being in a place that affirms you. I felt safer. But Idaho is my home. I never thought I'd be back here. And here I am, and we love it. And we hate it.
And I'm so glad that you're here too.
It's wild because I'm from Reno, but I've lived here all of my adult life. So like, when I think back to Reno, I think of like school and being a kid. I don't like it there. I think it's gross. But here I have my life. I have my friends. I have everything I've worked for. And the idea of having to leave, not because I want to and I feel like it's time for me to move on, but because I have to,
Yeah,
is terrible.
it is.
And it's really difficult to reconcile that. But you also have to balance, like, well, is it safe to be here?
Right.
You know, because in my transition, I'm still at that point where people harass me in public. And there are times when, like, I feel like this is not safe.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that Idaho, Boise in particular, is much safer than most other places, just because Boise is a safe town.
Yeah. But even like to take that further, and then maybe this isn't the best question for you, but I've been wondering this for a while because, you know, we now live in a state in which young people don't have access to gender affirming care.
Yeah.
Many adults, including myself, don't have access to gender affirming care any longer.
Right.
They're working on getting ready to pass a bill around making it like around facilities to where trans people can't use the restroom basically in public. There's all these sorts of things that are happening at a state level as well as a national level.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what could a city do? Like, could a city deem itself a sanctuary? And because in a lot of ways, gender affirming care is a life or death situation. I used to do needle exchange work.
Right.
And back in the day, you could get syringe exchange programs to work in cities where it was illegal. If you could get, the city would deem it like an emergency situation in which then people could inject and then they would give them the stuff, you know, so it can be safer. And, you know, and the police would not, you know, reinforce it. And there was like, the city was on board.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if the city could do something like the city of Boise could do that and help trans folks of all ages access gender affirming care, could pee in public or even just exist in public in Boise. It seems like that maybe a city could remove all state funding, remove all federal funding in order to provide care to a very small group of people, but enough in which we could have protections.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a couple things to answer that. No. So the facilities bill, one thing I wanted to know, and this it's a horrifying bill, absolutely horrifying.